Hello and welcome to this episode of Focus On with myself, Palesa Mofokeng. South Africa's latest crime statistics reveal that Gauteng is one of the most unsafe provinces to live in, contributing 27.1% of total crime in the country in the third quarter of 2022. The Gauteng provisional government has responded to the staggering statistics and says the battle against crime is an apex priority. The Gauteng government has recruited crime prevention wardens, some which you may have seen in your communities, and plans to implement various technology-driven crime-fighting initiatives that will give law enforcement the edge in ridding our streets of crime. Now, for more on this conversation, I am joined by the Gauteng MEC for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, E-Government, Research and Development, Mzi Khumalo. Mzi, thank you so much for your time. I just want to find out, what has been the reception to this campaign so far?
Good morning to you and good morning to the viewers at home. I think the first thing I want to start to clarify is that, in Gauteng you've got the Department of Community Service, which mandate is to deal with crime, and then you've got us as eGov. Our mandate is to develop further the concept of e-security. In other words, what are technologies that we can use to fight crime. I think that distinction is very important. But secondly, Premier the other time was on a latter note just said, when you take the whole of South Africa minus Gauteng, there won't be any crime. In other words, there's high concentration of crime in our particular province, and the crime is so sophisticated that you don't only require the boots in the streets to fight it, but you've got to equal it with the kind of technology that you want to develop. And I think this pronouncement that has been made, that eGov is now also going to get involved in assisting to fight crime in the province from a technological point of view. The reception out there has been so great. Many people are happy, and many people are coming forward with all sorts of innovations to help us to deal with this.
Your department talks about deploying cutting-edge technologies to fight crime in the Gauteng province. What technologies exactly are you talking about, and how exactly will they operate?
Well, for now, we've identified the following. Firstly, we identified the e-panic button. And secondly, we have identified the high-tech drones. The e-panic button, because we are focusing on the previously disadvantaged communities. We want African communities in particular, the informal settlements, the hostels and the townships, because crime is happening there and too little is being done to mitigate it. If you go to the CBD, you will see this CCTV, which are helping to fight crime. In fact, it's one of the priorities that is part of it. So it's drones, CCTV, and it's e-panic button. So the e-panic button, the overall intention is that we want to have it so that all citizens of this province must have an e-panic button, so that when you are in a situation wherein you need help, you can press that button. It will then report in the integrated command center that we are building, we'll talk to later on, and report to the nearby police station and all of those things, and there must be a reaction. As I said, even private sector is saying we can also use some of the platforms they have that helps them to react on emergency. There's emergency reactions units that they have in private. So link the whole thing with all of those kind of things. But also we wanted to mitigate the situation that women find themselves in, particularly with the high level of rape in our communities. We think that it can really help to mitigate that kind of a situation, where if a woman is really in need, and not only women, children who are being abused and all of those kind of things, not only children but even our grandmothers and grandfathers who are being abused, the abuse of elders, because it's also gaining momentum in our country. It will help us to deal with all of those things. Drones, sometimes there are crimes that are taking place in our communities and our police can't enter there because of the infrastructure of that particular areas, particularly as it relates to informal settlements and to some extent in some of the hostels. It's a bit difficult for policing to enter them. Drones will help us in that particular regard. There was an incident of the Zamazamas, illegal miners in the West End. They used drone to track down those people and they were caught very easy. They could not even see that there's a drone that was flying, and they were caught. So I was there looking, and okay, this thing does work. So in informal settlement, it will help us to do that. CCTV, and with face recognition, we want to emphasize that. We are also planning to extend it to link it up with, now that the e-toll is gone, that infrastructure of e-toll, link the whole system with e-toll, so that if you have a person that has been sought out by police and happen to pass in that infrastructure, that face recognition camera would capture that particular person. You will see next to those the police, and then immediately that person would be nabbed. But we are focusing them largely in the township informal settlement and hostel to try and mitigate against crime. So those are the technologies that we're working around for now, and we believe that they will help us to fight crime.
Okay, what's the financing plan? How do you plan to buy all of these machines?
Well, we're intending to buy them over MTF. Government is working over MTF. The chunk of the budget in terms of the figures is really in the Department of Community Safety. But if you take a helicopter, for instance, it doesn't come cheap. We're talking millions there. I just can't give you the exact figures as it is now. When you talk panic button, even in that instance, because there's issues of app servicing of those apps and all of those kind of things, we understand that we've surveyed the market. We have the sense of what is happening. What is the call that we're making? The call that we're making is that we want to create relationships with, for instance, companies like yourselves who might have a broader network on innovations and technology that we can use that is more effective and to some extent that is cheaper, easy to access and all of those kind of things. So we're working towards broadening our scope. As I said, we're serving the market. We don't want people to take advantage because, generally when government says we're going to do this kind of things, suddenly products gets to be expensive out there. We're very careful of that. That's why we want to engage with the key players in the ITC industry as such.
As I've mentioned in my intro, Gauteng is one of the most unsafe provinces to live in. In fact, Johannesburg was once again being identified as the most dangerous city to live in the country. So clearly crime has been rampant for a while now. So my question is, why now?
Well, it's not a question of why now. The efforts have been put in place. For instance, if you go to the CBD of Johannesburg, there is a command center there that is operated by police. There are cameras in the whole city that are helping to fight crime. Now, what is part of the problem there? Sometimes you'll see these videos that are circulated, a person being robbed and nobody reacts. People are passing by as if nothing is happening. So we can see that out of the camera, try to follow up those people. We want to improve on that. That's the objective now. It should not show as a person being robbed, but it should show as a person being robbed and the police intervening immediately. And that is why the introduction of the wardens, popularly known as Amapanyaza, That's the work they'll be doing, because they'll be deployed in those particular streets, the hotspots. One of those streets that we wanted to be as safe as it was in the past is Small Street, because it's no more as safe as it was in the past. And you know, quite a lot of things were happening in Small Street. That's where people were interacting, and all of those kind of things were targeting such a kind of streets, but deploying these people that would react immediately. And we don't have the scenes that we've seen. I mean, it's very painful. And you see people just passing. They don't want even to look, because it might be dangerous just to look at and all. So, but we want reaction. So we are doing all of those things to try and improve issues of efficiency and effectiveness.
You have recruited at least 6,000 of them in townships and informal settlements. Has there been some level of defense mechanisms or training that has been established for these very same people to also protect themselves?
Training is continuous. One of the issues that we are looking at is that when we trained them the other time, and we wanted them to have access even to guns, to be licensed, to operate like a real police. How do you deal with a criminal that is carrying a gun and you come barehanded? The relationship is not equal. We are working on that. There was some legal technical issues around that we are working with the SAPS and the traffic management people and so on. So that's one of the trainings that will be there to make them more effective and efficient. Some of them we're going to be targeting them, and they're going to be trained as the drones pilots, so that they know how to because there's pilot that uses a drone, because drone flies in the air and all of that. So you need to know how far it should fly and so on, so that you don't contravene the aviation laws as such. So some of them, they will be trained there. I was in the command center that we have established as eGov, the interim one, because we are working at the bigger one. And we want to link it up with even the disaster management center, because we've got to improve also in that area of disaster management center. So I was there. I found some of the youth wardens in a training sessions, because they're going to be mending that for 24 hours. They were trained on how to utilize those screening, the technology, you know, watching there. This thing, the crime is happening in Katlehong. You can see in a particular school. What do you do to ensure that you ensure that there's a speedy response insofar as that? So they'll be very sophisticated over a period of time. Physical training has happened. They now have basics of what is required, but we are improving their level of fighting crime skills.
Thank you so much, Mzi. That's where we'll park on conversation for now. That was the Gauteng MEC for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, E-Government Research and Development, Mzi Khumalo. And that's how we wrap up this episode of Focus On. But until then, it's goodbye for now.